The kitchen pulsed with noise. Clanging pans shouted orders, the hiss of hot oil. In the dim corner near the back heat lamp, a soft figure moved with quiet precision. Mrs. Helen, shoulders slightly hunched but hands unwavering, unwrapped a lunchbox swaddled in an old towel. Inside lay simple comfort: steamed rice, tangy pickled vegetables, and a single boiled egg. There was nothing extravagant about the meal, but it radiated warmth, like a memory preserved in steam. Opposite her, leaning against the stainless steel sink, stood Tom, a young waiter with sunken cheeks and trembling fingers. His eyes darted from the floor to her face. Pale lips, unspoken fatigue. "You didn't eat again, did you?" Helen asked gently, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Tom shook his head. Tips had been brutal this week. Rent loomed. Pride and hunger waged war inside him. Without hesitation or judgment, she slid the lunchbox into his hands. No lecture, no pity, just care. "Eat slowly," she said. "It's still warm." As he opened the lid, steam spiraled up like an exhale. For one fragile moment, the chaos of the kitchen, the yelling, the orders, the constant motion, faded into silence. It was just warmth and rice and the aching relief of being seen. But peace is often fleeting. Hidden near the pantry, a pair of watchful eyes captured the scene through the lens of a camera phone. Then, cutting through the ambient noise like a blade, "What the hell is this?" Carl, the floor manager, stormed into view, his stride thunderous, his face reddened with outrage. His eyes locked on the lunchbox like it was contraband. Tom froze, a forkful of rice halfway to his mouth. Mrs. Helen didn't flinch. Her arms dropped quietly to her sides. Carl didn't pause. In one swift, humiliating motion, he slapped the lunchbox from Tom's hands. Rice splattered like raindrops across the tiles. The egg rolled, spinning before settling under a prep table. "No outside food," Carl roared. "Especially not this trash. You think we're running a street corner charity here?" A hush fell over the kitchen. Even the fryers seemed to still. Tom's head lowered in shame. Helen's gaze dropped to the scattered rice. Some grains clung to the toes of her shoes. Carl scanned the room, lips curling into a mocking grin. "Anyone else want to bring their little homemade sob stories in here?" he sneered. "Go on, try me. Let's see how fast you're out." His voice echoed against the metal and tile. In the shadows, the camera kept recording, unblinking, unforgiving. Just beyond the kitchen doors, a small glass panel offered a sliver of the back area. At table 7, a woman in her late 50s paused with her wine glass mid-air. That shout, it wasn't just background noise. She turned slightly, peering into the kitchen, unease creasing her brow. Then she reached for her phone and hit record. The video was shaky. Through the glass, she captured a boiled egg on the floor, an older woman frozen in place, a manager yelling. She didn't know their names, didn't know the backstory, but something felt deeply, unmistakably wrong. Around her, diners kept eating, servers kept moving. But she didn't stop recording. In the kitchen, Helen bent down and picked up the crushed egg with her bare hands. No one helped. The camera caught it all. Carl's voice rose again, hotter, crueler. "Who said you could share food here?" he shouted, stepping toward the mess. "This is a business, not a soup kitchen." No one replied. Helen remained kneeling, gently gathering scattered rice with fingers aged by decades of labor. Tom joined her silently, kneeling beside her. Carl sneered and kicked the lunchbox aside. It hit the wall with a clatter. "Unbelievable," he spat. "You want to feed everyone like this? Maybe we should turn the place into a donation buffet. See how long we last." The kitchen stayed deathly still. Helen stood slowly. Her hands were sticky with rice, her face calm but deeply weary. Carl chuckled darkly and muttered, "Every damn day, this place gets sadder." From the shadows, the phone camera still recorded, steady and damning. But in another corner, behind a stack of delivery crates, Another figure stood watching. Hat pulled low, apron clean, eyes alert. He looked ordinary. A new hire, perhaps. But his hand wasn't holding a phone to film, he was recording sound. Every word, every silence. His attention never left Helen. She wiped the floor with paper towels, her knees stiff, back aching. The rice clung to her fingers, sticky and persistent. Then, over the soft sounds of the kitchen came a new voice, measured, quiet, powerful. "I'm Jackson, the CEO of this company," he said, "and this is why I went undercover." A pause. Not for numbers, not for profits, for truth. And today, I found it. The screen dimmed slightly, but the image of Helen's hands, cleaning, unseen, remained. She opened the door to her apartment with a soft creak. Careful not to disturb the neighbors, she slipped inside. The hallway reeked faintly of old paint and stale cooking oil. She removed her shoes, the soles dark with kitchen grime, and placed them neatly beside a towel by the door. The floor creaked beneath her socks. In the room, a mattress on the ground, a small fan clicking rhythmically, a folding chair, a chipped basin. She poured warm water into it, rinsing her hands slowly. Bits of rice still clung beneath her nails. Helen didn't speak, but her silence said everything. The kind of kindness that costs something, the kind that persists when no one is watching. And now, someone finally was. She hung her apron on a rusted nail hammered into the wall. It swayed gently, still damp with the scent of oil and sweat clinging to the fabric. Then she sat, not to rest, but to simply exist. In the hush of her small room, the silence after a day of invisibility felt like its own kind of music. Outside, the world moved on, but here, the moment stretched wide, still, sacred. Steam curled from a humble rice cooker perched on the corner counter. She moved barefoot across the worn floorboards, the chill biting softly at her skin. Her hands, though tired, moved with elegance, slicing pickled vegetables, placing each sliver with care. She added a boiled egg to the rice, careful not to chip the shell. There were 2 containers, one for her, and one smaller. She filled both equally, not leftovers, not scraps. Equal portions, equal dignity. She reached for a notepad, tore a corner, and penned a note in her slanted, meticulous handwriting. "If you're hungry, please eat." No name, no backstory, just compassion folded under the lid, quiet but unwavering. She wrapped the smaller container in a cloth, tucked it beside her own meal in her worn bag. The room was still warm from the rice cooker's heat, but her fingers had grown cold. A siren howled faintly outside, a reminder that even at night, the city never fully slept. She set her alarm for 4:30 a.m. Another early morning, another meal to give away. In the corner, a small altar flickered with a single candle. The frame, chipped and aging, held a black and white photo of her husband. He wore a delivery cap, his smile etched with exhaustion, but sincere. She stood in front of it, her hands clasped, her gaze soft. She didn't speak. She never did. Tucked under the frame was a faded delivery receipt. His last shift, the one he never returned from. A rainy day, a road too slick, a break too late. She never blamed the driver, never cursed fate. She just kept going, the way some women do, shoulders up, sorrow packed neatly behind their backs. She reached out, straightened his shirt in the photo. Wax from the candle had begun to drip, and she adjusted it gently. The grief was no longer sharp. It had settled into something deeper, quieter, an ache that lived beside her now, not against her. Then her phone lit up with a soft glow. "Hi, Grandma." The boy's voice sparkled through the screen, thin and bright like morning sun through blinds. Her expression shifted. The fatigue softened, the corners of her mouth lifting in a warm, instinctive smile. "You finish your homework?" she asked. He nodded, proudly waving a crumpled worksheet. "Got an A in math." Her applause was gentle, but her pride filled the room. "Good boy," she whispered. "Did you eat?" she asked next, more serious now. "A little, just noodles." Her tone lowered, not scolding but weighted with concern. "That's not enough, sweetheart. You need real food. Promise me, tomorrow, eat properly." "I will. And water, not just soda. Your brain needs fuel." He grinned, a gap where a front tooth had been. They didn't talk long, just enough to bridge two distant worlds with love. Before ending the call, she added softly, "Study hard, sleep early. Grandma's okay, don't worry about me." He waved. The screen dimmed. She sat still afterward. The smile lingered on her lips, but her eyes held more. Quiet burden, quiet resilience. The room, once again, fell silent. Her glasses slipped down her nose as her head nodded forward, sleep creeping in. The chair creaked beneath her as she dozed off, arms crossed, heart still wide awake. The soft glow of her phone had long faded. At 3 a.m., a single beep broke the silence. She stirred, blinked slowly. Her joints ached, her legs tingled, no complaints. She stood, stretched with small, careful motions, and walked to the counter. She rinsed rice in the dim light. The water turned cloudy, thick with starch. She drained it, refilled the pot, and clicked the cooker on. As it hummed to life, she peeled eggs, sliced radish, stacked containers. Her morning ritual. Wordless, graceful, precise. There was no music, no noise, just the hum of the machine and her own steady breath. This was her moment before the world remembered her again, before voices and orders filled the air. Here, in the dark, she mattered to herself. She packed 2 boxes, one for herself, one for someone who needed it more. The sky remained black, but inside, the room glowed with warmth. She tied the lunch boxes in clean cloth, her hands sure, her movements tender. Each knot was tied with care, as if she were binding hope into the folds. Then came a voice, layered gently over the scene. Measured, honest, worn. "I don't have much, but if I still have rice, I will share it." A pause. No one should work hungry. No one should feel shame for needing help. She wiped the counter with one last pass of the cloth, switched off the light, locked the door. Outside, the air was cold. The sidewalk still wet from the rain. She walked slowly, her bag nestled in both hands. Steam slipped from the fabric, a soft breath against the morning chill. At the back entrance of the restaurant, the security guard sipped from a chipped mug. "Morning, Mrs. Helen," he said, voice gravelly but warm. She smiled, genuine, soft. "Did you eat?" He chuckled. "Later, you always ask." She nodded, reached into her bag, pulled out a small, wrapped bun. "No excuses today," she whispered. He took it without protest. They didn't need more words. She passed through the gate. Her steps were lighter now. Inside, the service hallway still smelled faintly of bleach and old mop water. But when she entered, something changed. A stillness, a warmth, a shift. By mid-morning, the kitchen buzzed again. Fryers hissed, knives chopped, metal clanged. And Mrs. Helen, steady as ever, moved from sink to tile, wiping down surfaces in rhythm. Her motions were purposeful, practiced, her way of offering calm to chaos. But Carl leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching. His voice cut through the air like a blade wrapped in velvet. "Someone's working hard to impress," he said, loud enough to carry across the room. She didn't flinch, just kept wiping. "Wash in the sink, twice?" "What's next? Polishing the mop?" No one laughed. A few glanced down. She stayed quiet. He brushed past her, close enough to crowd. "You know, people work like that when they're afraid of being replaced." Still, she said nothing. But her hands trembled, just enough for her to notice. The tension held, like a breath before the storm. Then, a quiet break. At the dish station, a young prep cook named Anna approached, holding her gloves, head slightly lowered. "Hey," she began, voice soft. "I just wanted to say thank you." Mrs. Helen looked up. Her eyes met Anna's, and something in the weight of the day shifted. Just slightly, but enough. "For the rice yesterday, I didn't have time to eat," Anna said, her voice low but sincere. "That saved me." Mrs. Helen smiled, small but radiant in its warmth. "It's just food," she replied gently, but her tone carried more than the words. It was humility wrapped around quiet purpose. Anna shook her head, her eyes shimmering. It wasn't just food. They didn't need to say more. The silence between them was thick with understanding. After a brief pause, Anna turned and went back to her station. Mrs. Helen watched her go, then returned to the stack of plates waiting on the counter. Her smile lingered, not wide, but deep. That moment meant something. For Anna, it was survival. For Helen, it was enough. But the calm never lasted. "Mrs. Helen, manager's office." The voice was clipped, rushed. A server pointed toward the hallway. Without hesitation, she wiped her hands on her apron, nodded once, and walked quietly toward the office. Inside, the room was cool, clinical. Carl sat behind a desk, tapping a pen against the surface. He didn't look up. He didn't ask her to sit. "You've been bringing food in, sharing it with staff." His tone was flat, already decided. She stood still, hands folded respectfully. He continued, monotone. "It's a violation, health code, liability, it's against policy." Still, she said nothing. Carl leaned forward, his voice sharpening. "This isn't your kitchen. It's not a family gathering. You don't get to play mother here." She kept her eyes on the floor, expression unreadable. He waited for a response. "Got none. I'm letting you off with a warning. This time, next time, right up, or worse." She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, like a bow, then turned to leave. "Stick to mops and buckets," he added, voice like gravel. "That's what you're here for." That afternoon, Carl stood by the break table, phone in hand. A lunchbox wrapped neatly in cloth sat untouched, still warm. He snapped a photo, quick, cold. A few taps later, a message appeared in the staff group chat. "Charity kitchen. Who's handing out pity meals now?" Then a second. "Keep this up. We'll need a donation jar next to the knives." Laughter flickered across phones. Some chuckled quietly. Others said nothing. Anna read it. Her jaw tightened. She locked her phone without a word. In the mop room, Mrs. Helen kept working, unaware. Carl slid his phone back into his pocket, smirking. The lunchbox remained untouched. But now it was more than food. It was a target. Marco, a line cook, glanced at the thread. He scrolled slowly, frowning. His thumb hovered over the reply field, but he didn't type. Anna wiped down a cutting board, shoulders tense. She avoided everyone's gaze. Another prep cook looked at the message and slid their phone into a deep apron pocket. Silence filled the break room like smoke, heavy, stifling. Everyone had seen the message, and everyone chose not to see the lunchbox. Mrs. Helen clocked in early the next day, like always. She tied her apron and walked to the staff schedule. Her name wasn't there. She blinked, checked again. Tuesday, blank. Wednesday, someone else's initials. Thursday, nothing. She stood beside the sink, unsure. Maybe it was a mistake. Anna walked past her. Their eyes met for a split second. Then Anna looked away. Marco busied himself with a clipboard, pretending not to see her. Finally, Helen asked the floor supervisor. "Ask Carl," he muttered without looking up. She waited. 10 minutes, then 30. Carl never came. So she untied her apron, folded it slowly, placed it gently on the counter. No one stopped her, no explanation, no goodbye. Just silence. She walked out the same way she came, quiet, steady, unseen. But this time there was no shift waiting for her tomorrow. The lunch rush filled the restaurant with voices, clattering dishes, and the hum of conversation. Mrs. Helen returned, not to work, but with a small container in hand, heading to the back. Carl saw her. He moved fast, cutting across the floor and stepping into her path. "What's that?" he barked, loud enough for customers to hear. Before she could reply, he grabbed the container, tilted it. Rice spilled onto the floor. The boiled egg cracked, yolk seeping onto tile. He stared at the mess. Then at her. "Dirty like this? You think anyone should eat that?" Guests nearby paused. Some turned their heads. Others pretended not to see. Mrs. Helen knelt slowly. Her hands reached for the lid. Carl scoffed, "Disgusting," and walked away. She said nothing. She picked up each grain of rice, carefully, slowly. Her knees creaked. Her back ached. But her hands were steady. Across the room, under a napkin, a phone recorded everything. Murmurs stirred. Forks paused mid-air. A chair shifted. "She's still picking it up," someone whispered. Was that the manager? Did he just... Still, no one intervened. Her reflection shimmered on the tile, small, hunched, alone. Someone laughed awkwardly. Then silence again. Anna watched from the prep station, fists clenched. She stepped forward, voice low but sharp. "That wasn't okay." Carl turned. His eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Anna's voice didn't shake. "You embarrassed her in front of everyone. She didn't deserve that." Carl stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You want to join her?" Anna swallowed. "Plenty of people waiting for your hours," he added. "You want to keep your spot? Know your place." He leaned in, his whisper venomous. "One more word, and you're off the schedule by morning." Then he turned and walked off. Anna stood there, breath short, face flushed. Not with fear, but fury held in check. That evening, the front desk printer hummed. A page rolled out. It was a customer email, short, clear, subject, concern about staff treatment, message, "I witnessed a female worker being humiliated today. Food knocked to the floor. No respect. Please address." Carl read it aloud in the break room like a joke. "Humiliated?" He laughed. "People are so soft." He dropped the paper on the counter. "Probably some bored woman with nothing better to do. I'll handle it." He poured his coffee. Calm. Arrogant. "Corporate trusts results, not feelings," he said smugly. No one responded, but not everyone was silent. In the back, the kitchen had emptied. Only a few prepped for morning. Mrs. Helen stood by the sink, unwrapping a cloth bundle. Inside, rice, egg, greens. Still warm. Across from her, a teenage dishwasher leaned heavy on the counter. She said nothing, just pushed the box toward him. "Eat before it gets cold," she whispered. He nodded, too tired to speak. Then, well, Carl. He stepped into the room, arms crossed. "Didn't we talk about this?" She straightened. Met his gaze. Calm. He stared at the meal like it was an offense. "You think this is noble? It's not. It's a problem." The boy froze. "You're done," Carl said. She didn't respond, but she didn't take the box back either. He stormed in, voice booming. "You're done. Get your things." Pots clattered. Conversation stopped. Mrs. Helen stood still, cloth in hand, eyes wide. Carl stepped forward, grabbed her name tag, Helen/cleaning staff, and ripped it from her chest. The plastic cracked. The pin snapped. "Leave, now, or I call security." Her hands trembled. She looked around. No one looked back. Slowly, she turned toward the locker room. She wiped her hands on her apron, folded it once. At the doorway, she paused. A single tear slid down her cheek. And then, she walked away. She didn't wipe the tear. She just kept walking, without her name, without defense, without a single word. Yet behind her, the silence she left in the kitchen roared louder than any order ever shouted. The place, once buzzing with noise, froze in a stillness that made even the air feel heavy. That night, a screen flickered to life in a quiet room. A video, less than a minute long, began to circulate online. It was raw, unpolished, grainy footage, the clatter of the kitchen behind it. Carl's voice, sharp and cruel, rang out clearly. "You think this is noble? It's a problem." The camera had caught everything. The spilled food, the torn name tag, Mrs. Helen's stillness, her grace. By midnight, the clip had been reposted thousands of times. "Who treats staff like this?" One caption read. "She was feeding someone. That's her crime?" Another said. "I hope this goes viral." By 3 a.m., it did. Local bloggers picked it up. Group chats lit up with screenshots. A hashtag began trending, #, let her eat. The video wasn't edited, no music, no filters. Just the truth, unblinking. And for once, the internet didn't scroll past. By morning, the phones at the restaurant started ringing. Not for bookings, but to cancel them. "Hi, we're canceling our reservation for Saturday. We saw the video." Birthdays, anniversaries, corporate luncheons. Gone. Emails followed. Short, furious, unfiltered. "We won't support a place that humiliates its workers. That woman showed more dignity than your entire management team." Online ratings began to nosedive. 4.8 stars, then 4.1, then 3.6. Dozens of new reviews poured in. "Disgusting behavior. Fire the manager. Apologize to her. She deserves a raise. He deserves consequences." By noon, the restaurant's rating had dropped below 3 stars. Carl sat at his desk, endlessly refreshing the screen. More comments, more outrage. And always, the same haunting image. Mrs. Helen, kneeling, collecting rice, name tag missing, dignity intact. In the boardroom, tension sat thick in the air. 10 department heads stared at muted monitors playing the viral clip again and again. No one needed the sound anymore. Everyone already knew what was said. "We've lost 3 major clients," the head of operations whispered. "PR's drafting a statement," someone else muttered. "But it's too late." At the head of the table, Jackson, still in the same simple polo, remained silent. He watched the frozen frame of Mrs. Helen, paused mid-movement. Then he stood. "Everyone out," he said quietly. They hesitated. "I need the room." Chairs scraped back. One by one, they left. Jackson remained. And finally, he picked up the remote. The next morning, a mandatory staff meeting was announced. Managers, servers, dishwashers, they gathered on the main dining floor, unsure of what was coming. Jackson stepped forward. No apron, no hat. Just a microphone in hand, eyes steady. "My name is Jackson," he began, voice calm but firm. "I'm the CEO of this company." A collective hush fell over the room. "For the past 2 weeks, I worked beside you. No title, no office, just eyes and ears." He paused. "And this is what I learned." Screens behind him lit up, footage from hidden cameras, hallway recordings, quiet moments. Mrs. Helen, offering food. Carl, mocking her. Anna, silenced by threats. The room watched, frozen. No edits, no dramatic cuts. Just the truth. Then Jackson held up a photo. Black and white. A woman behind a sink, sleeves rolled, face gentle. "This is my mother," he said softly. "She washed dishes in our first restaurant for 10 years. She never asked for a raise. Never missed a day. She brought food for the younger ones. Quietly. Always quietly." He looked toward the crowd, his voice thick with memory. "When I saw Mrs. Helen, I saw her. The same hands, the same heart, the same silence when no one is watching." He paused again. "One day, someone gave my mother a meal, just rice, 1 egg, a gesture she never forgot." He glanced toward the empty space Mrs. Helen once stood in. "And today, I saw that gesture again, and now it's my turn to return what was once given. No applause, just stillness." Carl shifted uneasily. No one looked at him. A memo was posted by noon. Subject: Management Review. Status: Carl and Gwen suspended indefinitely. The news traveled like wind through the kitchen. Something cracked and then shifted. The quiet gave way to a ripple of applause. It started slow. One pair of hands, then more. Not for a promotion, not for a milestone, but for dignity, for justice. Later that day, a handwritten letter arrived at the front desk. To the woman who shared her lunch, "Thank you. You reminded us that kindness doesn't wear a name tag." It was pinned to the staff board. People read it twice. Others just stood still before it. Mrs. Helen wasn't there, but her presence filled the room. Later that week, the team gathered again. No microphones, no speeches. Just Jackson near the counter she once cleaned. "In her honor," he said, "every staff member will now receive one hot meal per shift. No forms, no approvals, no questions." A murmur of disbelief swept the room. "It's not charity," he added. "It's respect." He folded the paper and placed it on the counter. "This policy is permanent. It carries her name." They all knew who he meant. A clipboard made its way down the prep line. Chefs, dishwashers, servers, one by one, they signed. At the top, written in bold black marker, "No one goes hungry here." Anna signed first. Her hand shook, but her signature was firm. Marco followed. Even the janitor, who spoke little English, asked for help so he could sign too. They taped it above the staff meal station. Below it, someone placed a photo of Mrs. Helen, smiling softly, mid-laugh, from a day long gone. That afternoon, meals were shared without whispers, without shame, just hands passing plates. One act now held by many. A letter arrived at a quiet apartment near the city edge. Mrs. Helen opened it gently. At the top, the company logo. Below it, a message. "We invite you to return. Not as staff, but as something greater." Page 2 read, title, "Ambassador of Kindness, to remind us what truly matters." She read it twice. A car waited outside. The same one that once ignored her now came back with respect. When she stepped inside the restaurant, the entire team stood in silence. Aprons on, hands folded. She didn't speak, just looked at the wall, at her photo, the pledge beneath it. She wasn't a shadow anymore. She was the reason it all changed. Inside her locker, an envelope rested quietly. Just her initials in pencil. Inside, a note. Lined paper, a few crossed-out words. Ink pressed deep. "I saw everything. I stayed quiet. I was scared. But when you stood there and never lowered your eyes, you didn't just share rice. You shared courage. Because of you, I finally spoke up. Not just for you, but for me." She folded the note, placed it near her heart. Outside, the kitchen buzzed. Another shift, another day. But now, another voice had found its strength. And it all began with a quiet act of kindness. 1 year later, the staff room was warmer. Same tiles, same walls. But now, laughter. Now, fullness. Mrs. Helen sat at her usual table, reading a note she once wrote and pinned up herself. A young new hire approached, nervous, barely 20. She held a cloth-wrapped lunchbox. "Today," she said shyly, "you eat mine." Mrs. Helen blinked, surprised. "You always gave," the girl whispered. "Let someone give back." She placed the box gently on the table. Helen's fingers brushed the edge. The warmth familiar. Inside, rice, pickled vegetables, a boiled egg. Same meal, same kindness. But now it was hers to receive. "Thank you, child," she said. The girl nodded. Some gifts need no history, just heart. The afternoon sun stretched shadows across the pavement. Mrs. Helen stepped outside, scarf tugged gently by the breeze. She turned to face the building, glass polished, sign shining. "I used to clean trash," she whispered. "Today, I've cleaned something heavier." A pause. The silence, the dismissal, the quiet cruelty they thought no one noticed. She smiled softly. Dirt can be washed away, but pain takes longer. Still, it can be done. She took a step forward, not away, but onward, knowing her worth. Behind her, the staff shared a meal. Her name? It still lingered. Spoken softly, lasting. A black screen faded in. Simple white text. My mom was treated the same. No one stood up for her. Watching this, I cried. Thank you. Another comment scrolled. She reminded me of my aunt. That kind of strength doesn't shout. It endures. More names appeared. Mothers, teachers, janitors, a neighbor, a stranger on a bus. Real stories, real hearts, all seen. Then, the original clip played again. Mrs. Helen, kneeling, lifting rice from the floor. But now, her silence echoed louder than any voice. She wasn't alone anymore. Her story had become all of ours.